Hello, Daylight Church Online. I'm H.L. Hussman. I'm the lead pastor here at Daylight, and we just want to say thanks for tuning into our broadcast and being a part of our online community. We've been brainstorming ways that we can effectively and efficiently connect more with people in remote locations that are watching us online, and I have a few opportunities I'd like you to know about. Number one, if you would introduce yourself, we would love to know you. You can email online@daylightchurch.com. That's online@daylightchurch.com. Just tell us who you are, where you're watching from, how you found out about us, and any other relevant information that you wanted to share. We would love that opportunity. Secondly, we have a website, mydaylightchurch.com, and on that website is a tab that says Join the Daylight Crew. There's things that you can do off-site that would benefit us and allow you to engage more with the community. You can join our prayer team and our prayer ministry. You can join our study team and our service team. You can join our small groups, and we're happy to Zoom you in. There's all kinds of opportunities on that tab, and we would appreciate if you would fill it out and make yourself known to us. If you believe that Daylight is kind of your home away from home and you don't have a faith community of your own, and you would like to support and be a part of this financially, you can do so at daylightchurch.com/giving or by texting the number 84321 and completing a short form and selecting Daylight Church as the place you're going to give. If there's any way we can serve you, we would love the opportunity, and you can always reach us at online@daylightchurch.com. Thanks, and enjoy the service.
Today, I'm going to begin with the lyrics from one of my favorite songs. And so I'm excited about this. This is a song sung by England Dan and John Ford Coley back in the 1970s. Woohoo. And here it goes. Name your price, a ticket to paradise. I can't stay here anymore. I've looked high and low. I've been from shore to shore to shore. If there's a shortcut, I'd have found it, but there's no easy way around it. Light of the world, shine on me. Love is the answer. Shine on us all, set us free. Love is the answer. Who knows why? Someday we all must die. We're all homeless boys and girls. Seems we are never heard. It's such a lonely, lonely, lonely world. People turn their heads and walk on by. Tell me, is it worth just another try? Light of the world, shine on me. Love is the answer. Shine on us all. Set us free. Love is the answer. Tell me, are we alive or just a dying planet? What are the chances? Excuse me, I'm going to try and, sorry. Ask the man in your heart for the answers. And when you feel afraid, love one another. And when you've lost your way, love one another. And when you're all alone, love one another. And when you're far from home, love one another. And when you're down and out, love one another. And when your hopes run out, love one another. And when you need a friend, love one another. And when you're near the end, love. We've got to love. We've got to love one another. Light of the world, shine on me. Love is the answer. Shine on us all, set us free. Love is the answer. Isn't that great? I love that song. I know, seriously, it's such a great song. And today, my main point, I'm just going to give away the whole plot here, is that love is the answer. That the light of the world does set us free. And love is the answer in setting us free and keeping us free. Not just free in the go to heaven when you die sense, but free to live well and breathe deeply and not be a stressed mess. So, little story here. I was a fairly faithful Bible reader for many years. I went through seasons when it was daily and seasons when it was, maybe not quite daily, but it was regular. But at some point, I began realizing that some of how I'd been reading it felt kind of off, just not quite right. I began questioning the lens through which I'd been reading it. And to use kind of an eyeglasses analogy, I'd begun seeing cracks and warped places in the lenses that I was using to read, and I didn't trust my vision anymore. Every time I tried to read the Bible, I kept hearing interpretations in my head that I didn't believe anymore. that didn't make sense to me anymore. I didn't believe they were true, but I couldn't read this verse or this passage or that passage without sort of automatically adding in these other verses from other places, and it all sort of became this series of systems and programs and certainties. And it really had lost the beauty and the wonder and the mystery. And some of that had some kind of negative consequences in how I viewed situations and how I viewed the people around me. And so I stopped reading the Bible for a while. I just couldn't manage to fix or replace the lens that I was seeing it all through without just taking off the glasses completely. And so I took a break for a while and kind of hit a reset button. My eye doctor told me once that most people, if they stop wearing their glasses for a while, that eventually their eyes will see better on their own without the glasses, but it's because the eyes are working too hard, and so the eyes are straining to be able to see more reasonably, and in the end, your eyesight ends up even worse, and your eyes end up even worse because they're just straining so hard. And so, actually, I recently got a new prescription for my glasses. It turns out my glasses were, I could see, but there was more strain on my eyes, and I needed new lenses. And so I got new lenses, and lo and behold, when the eye doctor, put, how they do, they kind of put them in front and go, how's that? And he put that in, and it was like my eyes breathed a sigh of relief. I think only those of you who've maybe worn glasses or like found that you needed glasses and then you started wearing them, like you get that, right? You get the right lenses and you just breathe a sigh of relief. So eventually it was time for me to put on new glasses, right? It was time for me to put the glasses back on. Hopefully there will be some new lenses there, and we'll see how the Bible reading goes now. And so I wasn't entirely sure how well the lenses would work or how I would see things with these new lenses, but it was time. It was time to try them out. And so I began reading in the gospel account that Matthew wrote, and I was surprised. It was beautiful. There was beauty in it that truly I had never seen before. There was a freshness that I had missed, or that my senses had just become dulled to over time. And the more I read, the more beauty I saw. And so I want to talk about that beauty some today, but I got to do a couple of disclaimers first. And so disclaimer number one is we all wear lenses. Some of you are blessed to not actually wear physical glasses yet, but we all wear lenses, right? Everything, when you read a Bible verse and when I read that same Bible verse, we're going to process it differently. Sometimes it's a little differently, sometimes it's a lot differently, but we're gonna see things a little differently because, again, of just the lens that we see things through. Because nobody reads the Bible or anything in a vacuum, right? Without context, without background. And so all of your life experiences and things that you've seen and things that you've heard and things that you've done and things that you've thought, right? That all comes into play in everything that you read and see and hear. And so when I say that I took off my former lens and now I have kind of a new lens that I'm reading the Bible through, I'm not saying that I traded something like totally wrong for something totally right, or that now I've got it all figured out and woo, I'm on the mountaintop now and I get it all. Because I don't think we can ever fully, really, really, truly understand absolutely correctly, right, what we read, what we see, what we hear, what we experience. If anything, I'm trying now to avoid a real strong sense of certainty, right? Especially about the details. Paul said in 1 Corinthians that we see as through a glass darkly, right? And I think he's kind of referring to that lens, right? Part of it is, I've never seen the face of God, right? We've not had this, face to face. I don't, Paul says we will know fully as we are fully known. We're not there yet, right? And so right now, when I read or when I see people or when I whatever, it is kind of as through a glass darkly. I don't see it all really, really, truly as it is. So you read through a lens, you interpret through a lens, you see and you judge other people through a lens, but some lenses help us see more clearly than others. And sometimes it's just time to ditch a certain lens. Paul said in 1 Corinthians that love doesn't fail, right? Everything else, including knowledge, we're going to someday see is flawed and incomplete. We don't see anything as it really truly is. But love endures. And even though we cannot love perfectly now, love is the big, big thing. Love is the answer. So, second disclaimer that I think I probably dealt with in the first disclaimer, but I'm the queen of disclaimers, so here comes another one, just indulge me. So I'm not claiming to have all the answers here, right? And I'm not going to stand up here and tell you, I totally understand. I know I don't have everything figured out, for sure. And so I'm sure that some of what I'm saying today, I might look back on 3 years from now and go, tweak that a little bit. Anybody else here ever said anything and then later on you're like, I don't actually fully agree with myself anymore? So third, everything that I share today is stuff that I mess up a lot, right? I miss the mark a lot. I think we all probably miss the mark a lot. But I still think that it's the best way. I think it's the best way and the best plan, and I think it's worth working for. Okay, so we ready? We ready for some good stuff here? So here's what absolutely flew off the pages and glowed just really brightly in passage after passage as I began reading the Bible again. And it's love, right? There it is. Verse after verse and passage after passage talked about love, referred to love. It was in the context of love, and specifically loving people, loving my neighbor, treating people well. Do you know how much of that book is about how we treat other people? It's there again and again and again and again. It's like that's all that there is. And I could talk for an hour straight, really, just about like this amazing thing and that amazing thing, but I'm not going to talk for an hour, and I'm going to kind of narrow it down a little bit. So recently, over the course of a couple of days, I read through all of the red letter print in the Bible. Right, that's all the words of Jesus. That's all the words of Jesus that we have in the gospel accounts, the Matthew and Mark and Luke and John, where the writers wrote about the life and the ministry and the death and resurrection of Jesus. And so I just read all the red letters, and I was looking for every place that Jesus made reference to the kingdom of God and the kingdom of heaven. And I know sometimes we hear those phrases, and we might be inclined to think of like, oh, kingdom of God, kingdom of heaven, we're talking about heaven. But I would argue that a lot of when Jesus was talking about this, he was talking about a kingdom here and now, right? And we've talked about this in here before, right? We're talking about the kingdom now and the kingdom not yet. And so, yes, is there a place beyond this world? And is there a place, and yes. But so much of what Jesus talked about with the kingdom was here and now, right? We're part of the kingdom. The kingdom is near. The kingdom is here. In Luke, Jesus told people that the kingdom was within them. That's kind of wild. Jesus said several times that the kingdom is near. And he taught us to pray that the Father's kingdom would come. So several of the parables and the analogies that Jesus spoke about the kingdom involve something small that is planted or sown or placed, and then it grows. Right? He said the kingdom is like yeast. It gets into the flour and it grows and it takes over. It's like seed sown in a field. Once it's planted, it grows on its own. It's like a net cast into the water, right? And then it catches an immeasurable number of fish of all kinds. It's like treasure in a field. It's worth getting the whole field just to have access to that treasure. He said it's like a banquet where everyone is invited. He said it's like a mustard seed. It looks small, but it grows really huge. So I told the kids in kids ministry last week that we are like ambassadors for the kingdom, right? That sometimes we can be like secret agents for the kingdom. That when we share love, because it is a kingdom based on love, that when we share love with the people around us, that we are kind of planting those seeds and sprinkling in that yeast, right? That we're stepping in with those things. And we are part of that yeast that's spreading and those seeds that are growing. So Jesus said the kingdom, in talking about the kingdom, is for those who do the will of the Father. So what is the will of the Father? Well, I think I found it in the Sermon on the Mount. So in Matthew 7, and this is one of those places where I was kind of blown away as I was reading, Jesus tells the people that just like we are generally not jerks to our kids, so God is also not a jerk to us. If your child asks for bread, you won't give him a stone, you'll give him bread because you're not a jerk to your kid. God gives good gifts to his kids too, and you're his kids. So that's pretty cool. But then Jesus says, without even a pause, like there's no line break there, there's not even an editorial subheading, from future long after Jesus, editors of the Bible. Like there's no pause here. Jesus immediately says, so in everything, do to others what you would have them do for you, for this sums up the law and the prophets. So doing to others what you'd have them do to you, treating people the way you'd like to be treated. Jesus says all the law and the prophets, like there were 600 and something laws in the Old Testament. There were the books of the law, the books of Moses, and all these prophets who came and spoke and spoke and spoke and spoke. So all these things, all the law and the prophets is summed up in treating other people the way we want to be treated. Really? Whoa. Giving bread instead of a stone. Now, because I think it's assumed that we all want to be treated well, I'm going to use that everything is summed up in treating other people well. And if the two greatest commandments are, as Jesus says they are, loving God with all your heart, mind, and strength, and loving your neighbor as yourself, then when Jesus talks about the will of God, it seems to me that the will of God is that we love people and treat them well. I don't know about you, but sometimes I get a little hung up on what is the will of God? What is the will of God? What do I do? Wow, okay, shoulders down, take a deep breath. Whoo, the will of God is you love him and you love the people around you. And by loving the people around you, we mean treat them well. Whoa. So everything comes down to how we treat one another. Now, I want to take the rest of Matthew 7 and put it into my own words, but we will read the words of Jesus after that so you can see how far off the mark I am here. So sometimes it can feel really constraining to live focused on how I behave toward other people. I have to kind of squeeze myself sometimes to fit into the space where I really care about other people and I treat them well. The way of Jesus is the way of love, and that narrows the path for us. And sometimes that's not the popular way to live, right? There are going to be a lot of people who won't agree with that or who won't live that way, won't want to live that way, will really struggle with living that way because it's hard. It can feel a lot more open to just throw my arms out and kind of do what I want to do and say what I want to say and just live as I see fit without concerning myself too much about other people and how they get along, or those people and how they're treated, or those other people and what happens to them. It feels like there's a lot more open space to just kind of deal with me and my people and us. And that can feel freer, but it's really not, right? That me first and my group and, well, let's make sure that we are taking care of us, that kind of thinking ends up leading to a lot of junk, and ultimately it kind of tears up everything. And there are lots of voices out there that will say, that's not necessarily the most important thing, that there are lots of other important things. And I could list a lot of the other really important things, and you could add to the list, right? We could come up with quite a list of really important things. And there are a lot of very loud voices out there that may say that how we treat other people is not necessarily the primary focus. And then they probably don't actually say that, right? Because who's going to actually say that? Oh, other people don't matter. It's just about me and my group and us. But maybe it's just that they don't really mention it at all. Maybe it's just that it doesn't come up in the conversation. It doesn't come up in the teaching. It's just not emphasized. But regardless of what people say or don't say, you can look around and you can see what people do and how they live their lives, right? You can see whether how they treat other people is something that seems important to them. Because people who care about other people tend to live like they care about other people. Or at least they seem to try, right? Again, who does that perfectly? I don't know anybody who does that perfectly. But maybe we at least try. People show it in the way that they live their lives. It's visible. And so lots of people do lots of important things, sometimes really important things, sometimes really impressive looking things. But if it's not based on how they treat the people around them, in the end, it all comes to naught. Love has to be the foundation, or it all comes tumbling down. Now, that's my interpretation. I'm going to go with what Jesus actually said here. And I don't know, you decide if you think that all these things fit together. So Matthew 7, beginning verse 12, he says, "In everything do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. Enter through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter it. But small is the gate and narrow is the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they're ferocious wolves. By their fruit you will recognize them. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus, by their fruit, you will recognize them. And not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles?' And then I will tell them plainly, 'I never knew you. Away from me, you lawless people.' Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house, and yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash." Now, I am not going to argue, and I'm definitely not arguing, that the way I'm currently reading this passage, like tying it all together, is the best way or the only way to read that passage. But I am going to argue that Jesus was not jumping around with 4 or 5 different topics in 4 or 5 different mini sermons in just those few moments of his larger sermon. And actually, as I read through the Sermon on the Mount, like the whole thing, without paying any attention to the editorial subheadings or where the paragraph breaks were or where the little verse numbers were, because of course all that stuff was added later, but I just read through the text. It looks like the entire sermon is not actually a fruit salad made of bits and pieces of little mini sermons and random topics that he just kind of wanted to toss all in there. This was not like everything I've ever known I'm going to try and sum up in 20 minutes. But rather it's an entire message that, like Jesus said all the prophets and all the law could be summed up in, has a theme of loving God and treating people well. Jesus begins with the Beatitudes in the Sermon on the Mount, and he tells the average people who are living difficult lives that God sees them and that they matter. And then he goes on to kind of tighten the screws on topics like murder and adultery, which, by the way, are very much about how we treat other people. And as you look at the big picture, a lot of it is he's saying we need to treat other people well and not be jerks. And treat them well because we love them and because we love God and not because it makes us look good. He points out that our stuff doesn't matter, which I think he's partly saying that to assure us that we can afford to help other people. Actually, in Luke, we see where he also told the people the Father was pleased to give them the kingdom and that they could sell their stuff and give it to the poor because the stuff doesn't matter, but the people do and our hearts do. And then his admonition about judging comes right in between not worrying about our stuff and asking, seeking, and knocking in trust that we won't be given a stone when we need bread. And then he takes that and he applies it yet again to treating other people the way we want to be treated. He says, not everyone who calls him Lord and does impressive stuff will enter the kingdom, but only those who do the will of the Father. Well, what is the will of the Father? Again, I'm going with love. I think it's love. So, us today, what does that look like? What does that look like for me or for you on a Sunday afternoon or a Monday morning or a Wednesday night? What does that look like? I think Jesus gives us some good examples. I'm going to go to Matthew 25, which is a really amazing chapter and kind of scary. He talks about people who saw hungry people and provided food, and people who saw a need for clothing and stepped in to share. He talked about people who knew that there were folks in jail and went to go visit them and remind them that they aren't abandoned. People who made sure that folks had water. People who helped others get what they needed for their health and their medical needs. People who welcomed strangers and included them. So what does that mean for us? I think maybe part of it, at least this is kind of what I'm thinking of for me. You do what works for you here. Maybe it's taking a few minutes to think about who you know who might be lonely or hurting right now. Because I bet you know somebody who's lonely or hurting right now. Somebody who maybe is kind of a big anxious mess right now. Somebody who's really struggling. Okay, well, if you were in that situation, would you want a call or a text or a visit? Maybe we do that. Maybe you'd want a reminder that you weren't alone. Or maybe we extend that out a bit and we think about what other needs you know about in the community. Maybe you come help prepare food for the food truck. Just, put that in there. Maybe you contribute to a local food pantry. Maybe you bring in some socks to put in the bin that we're going to have in the back. Maybe you keep some socks in the front seat of your vehicle to offer when you see somebody at a red light standing there with a sign and it's cold outside, because maybe you hate having cold feet and you think maybe that other people who are living outside would hate having cold feet. Maybe consider the needs beyond our community, because our neighbors include the whole global community. And I'm not here to give 20 different examples, but I think my point is, I think God has given each of us a heart for certain situations or certain people or certain groups of people. And so maybe we just take some time and ask him about that. But I think it also means considering our coworkers, especially, the difficult ones at work. And maybe you know that one that's seemed kind of off lately. And so how would you want to be treated there? Or the folks at the grocery store, or wherever else you shop, or your classmates, or the other drivers on the road. Ouch, never mind. Or the friend on social media, or the stranger on social media. Or maybe we just kind of stay off of social media. I don't know. It's a little scary out there. But I think the main thing is for us to, day by day and moment by moment, be willing to renew our lens and be willing to renew our mind. Ooh, hey, that's in the Bible too. Renew our minds. Renew our thinking to focus on the one thing that really, really matters, which Jesus says is love. How do we love other people? I think we get that love from the Lord, right? When we love God, he helps us to love other people. Not as a burden, right? Not as a one more thing. Jesus said his yoke was easy and his burden was light. I don't think that saying, well, we need to focus on love is like, oh, gosh, I've got these 20 other bazillion things that I've got to do, and now I got to think about loving people too. No, like, what if we sort of replace and we go, oh, maybe I don't have to drown in the minutia. Maybe I can sort of like zoom out, big picture. If we truly want to follow the way of Jesus, the narrow way, then the one and only thing that really matters is love. Maybe you wash the dishes at home as a sign of love for the people who are going to eat off of the dishes later, or the people who already ate off the dishes, I guess. Maybe you tip a little extra at the restaurant as a sign of love for the server. Maybe you pause for a few deep breaths, or you take a walk around the block as a sign of love for yourself. And because maybe when you pause, you remember that God is with you in the moment. And sometimes we really need that. Maybe you bite your tongue when that one person is on your last nerve. You know who that person is for you. And maybe that's a sign of love for them and for their heart. And maybe just love is the answer. And it kind of makes life a little simpler, and I think a little less stressful, and the lens gets a little clearer, and all the other stuff gets a little clearer. So, but I'm really great, I don't know about you, I'm really great at having good intentions. I'm very sentimental, I'm very emotional. If you want somebody to weep with you as you weep, I will weep. I will cry. I will cry at anything. I will cry at commercials. I will cry at really bad TV shows. I will cry at pictures. I just will cry. So if you, Paul says, that's so true. So it's the following through that maybe is a little different matter. It's the following through that's like, I will think of you all the time, but then actually reaching out, actually taking that next step to do something. Maybe that's the part where, I don't know about you, I need a little help with that part. And I think that's part of where we have to keep turning back to the Lord. We keep turning back to God, and we focus on knowing God, and we focus on letting God pour his love into us, and we focus on letting God teach us and show us the way of love. So the church that I grew up in included a corporate prayer, a group prayer of confession each week. And every week it got me good, and I want to share it with you in just a moment. Because I think it kind of sums up all the stuff. It talks about the fact that we've not loved God with our whole hearts, that we've not loved our neighbors as ourselves. And I think, man, that really sums up all sin, doesn't it? Like, all sin is because we've not loved God with our whole heart, and most sin is because we've not loved our neighbor as ourselves. And then it talks about asking the Lord to forgive us, and then moving forward, that we may delight in his will and walk in God's ways. And what is God's will? Oh, I think it's love. And what are God's ways? Oh, I think they're love, right? Now, I realize, okay, let's keep it real here. I can be pretty Pollyanna-ish, okay? Woo, love, let's love. I can really oversimplify things, just ask Paul. And I can hippie out with some 70s music. Okay, so this is me. It's just me being real here. I'm real, oh, let's just love. But I really do think that this lens of loving God and loving people, and when you read the Bible, seeing that, oh, it really is all about loving. It really is all about loving God and loving people. And not in this because God's gonna get you, sort of thing, but because it's just love. I really think doing that makes life simpler. Because there are times when I feel like I can just sort of hardly breathe because I'm drowning in the chaos and all of the things, and there's stuff to deal with here, and there's stuff to deal with there, and there's stuff to deal with there, and there's stuff to deal with there. And I'm just a stressed mess sometimes. I get way bogged down by that because I feel like I'm swimming through really cluttered waters. But when I can get my head above that, and I can breathe more freely, and I can drop my shoulders, which have been up over my ears, and I can just live. and I can just be free. Because that lens of love is what pulls my head above the clutter and above the haze. And it's that lens of love that makes it all more simple and more doable. I don't have to do all the things. I don't have to drown in the minutia. We can focus on loving God and loving people, and we let him show us what that looks like as we go from day to day. So I'm going to close with this prayer, and I invite you to pray it with me. And obviously, I'm going to pray it out loud, but I mean, you can just like pray it silently or just consider the words or pray it out loud if you want. All right, liturgical folks unite here. Yeah, so I'm going to close with this prayer, and you just handle it however you see fit. Most merciful God, we confess that we have sinned against you in thought, word, and deed, by what we have done and by what we have left undone. We have not loved you with our whole heart. We have not loved our neighbors as ourselves. We are truly sorry, and we humbly repent. For the sake of your Son, Jesus Christ, have mercy on us and forgive us, that we may delight in your will and walk in your ways to the glory of your name. Amen.